Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us this Saturday as we get started on part two of our Smart Love After Heartbreak series. Joining us today are yours truly and Mr. Terrence Findley. So, Terrence, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, my name's Terrence. I'm a criminologist. Formerly, I used to work for the government, specifically with crimes against children as well as threat detection. And now I use that same methodology to help people understand relationships, as well as understand what are the signs of problematic people and how best to deal with those situations. How about you, Ryan?
And my name's Ryan, and by trade, I'm a electrical and computer engineer and have moved my understanding of working with complex electrical systems as well as business development and working with people to understand not only how to build long-term plans for success, whether it's in production or whether it's in business, and marrying both those concepts and helping people really craft the life that they want, especially from a romantic and relationship perspective, focusing on the small things that we can do day by day, um, that helps us ignore the people who really hurt us and we shouldn't be around, and how to make ourselves the people we need to be to attract the people we really want, and how to make that a long-term, stable endeavor.
Perfect. Okay. So this concept that leads to the first chapter of our book is relationship bankruptcy. And one of the hardest parts of becoming a healed person, where we're no longer looking at the past as an outlet of how our future should be, is understanding we need to file for relationship bankruptcy. And what that means is we look at the ledger of our previous relationships. We learn what we need to learn from them, but we don't hold on to them like they're scales, like they're weights, because that doesn't help us go to the next level. And one of the ways we're going to talk about this today is for people to learn basic discernment. It's basic because it's a foundational skill that we need in relationships, but it's also basic because without it, it's almost impossible to form healthy friendships, relationships, intimate partner relationships in the future. So this is where we're going to begin. Go ahead, Ryan. I don't know how much you know about the history of killer whales, but in criminology, you spend a lot of time learning about animals and animal behavior. So we're going to start with hurtful versus helpful relationships. And one of the most legendary killer whales is Old Tom. Old Tom is extremely famous in the whaling community because Old Tom was a very large male orca whale that would help whalers kill humpback whales. And what Old Tom realized is that if he helped humans, the humans would let him eat the scraps. So he actually stopped hunting with pods of orca whales and primarily spent all of his time working with humans to his detriment, but also his success. On one end, old Tom was able to eat as many humpback whales as he wanted to because the whalers were very plentiful and they were very happy to hunt as many whales as possible. On the other end, old Tom used his own teeth to help drive the harpoons deeper into the humpback whales. Killer whales' teeth are not designed to handle steel and other metals like that. So over time, his own teeth grinded down and he starved to death. And this is extremely important when we're looking at relationships because a relationship could be helpful in the beginning and it can end extremely hurtful in the end. And that's why we have to be careful not romanticizing relationships that at one point were helpful, but have now devolved into toxic, hurtful interactions. Next slide. Yep, you're muted.
Thank you. One of the ways that betrayal hurts us the most is when we start to understand that it's because we didn't see it coming and we didn't expect it. And that often comes because we haven't done what we needed to truly evaluate and discern the people who are in front of us and choose how vulnerable we are to them. And at the end of the day, we all are imperfect and still make mistakes, and that is okay. But when we choose to ignore those mistakes, that is how the problems keep resurfacing. So we can mitigate betrayal and hurtful relationships that no longer serve us by getting better at discernment. Now, if you know where this movie comes from, this comes from a horror movie that came out, I believe, 2 or 3 years ago called Smile. And part of its depiction about insanity and some of the other stuff it was trying to show us was the fact that the main character's sense of reality was warped to the point where she was running away from everything. Now, she ran away from some of the things that were hurtful to her, but without the discernment to understand what is helpful to you, who are the people who truly want well for you and can help you. When we don't discern what we're running away from or what we're pushing out from our lives, we may be pushing out the bad and the good. And the way that problematic relationships manifest and people who like to manipulate others really gain hold is when they isolate us or we become isolated from the world. When we are unable to look at the people and the situations in front of us and decide what is good for us and what is not, this is what really keeps us solidified in a problematic relationship or a problematic pattern. So the lack of discernment means that we actually have no idea why we're where we're at, why we have people in our lives that are hurting us, why we're staying in these toxic relationships, and we have no idea where to go from there because we have no idea how to spot something that is healthy and good for us. So, on hardship, when it comes to hardship, one of the red flags that we wanted to talk about today is if somebody is constantly in hardship and they're always bitter about it, and they don't have a positive outlook for the future, and they don't have positive emotions, or they're not grateful for things around them. We all go through the problems, whether we show it to other people, whether we tell them, whether they know about it. We all have hardships. But a red flag is when somebody is unable to be grateful or have content with what they have or have a positive outlook on life. And that goes towards our green flag. If somebody is really struggling in life and having a hard time, they're sacrificing, they're moving forward on their path and purpose, or they don't know where to go, but they have a positive outlook nonetheless. The reason this is a green flag is because it shows us that this person is not fully controlled by their emotions, meaning their emotional state is controlled by what other people choose to do to them or what happens to them, and they do not see their life as a function of their own choices. And if someone's unable to be positive or have a good outlook in an otherwise negative situation, it's a sign that they're going to push those feelings of bitterness and resentment and anger towards us. But somebody who is positive in an otherwise negative or toxic situation means that they're looking past the problem towards can we do about it. And they are a happy person from within themselves, and they don't define themselves, their happiness, their content, their joy, their satisfaction, their gratefulness based on what they get or what's around them. And if we learn to have a positive outlook and be hopeful, even when we're messing up or even when we're not where we want to be, we're not only going to find that we are happier and we're grateful for the things we have, but that internal gratefulness is what other positive people, stable people, People that we are looking for in our lives are going to notice. And that is going to be one of the reasons why they become interested in this. So, one of the things Terrence and I have said multiple times, it's not just what we want or who we want, it's what they want as well. So, if we don't run away from hardship, but we focus on being a positive person with hope for the future who's working towards it, we're not only doing the work that we need to do to get there, but we're learning how to see that good trait in other people.
Exactly. And what I want to go to is pain is normal because we all have to go through it. However, it is not the destination. It is a pit stop. And one of the problems happen is that we treat our trauma as a destination that we can't leave instead of a drive through we need to drive away from. And that's one of the hardest things that I saw as a criminologist because I would occasionally have to give people bad news. And I don't mean like bad news as in you got fired from your job. I mean like bad news like your 7-year-old child is dead and you will never see this person again. Or your mom or father committed some type of crime and now that person might be going away for 25 to 30 years and you're going to foster care. And I'd have to explain that to a 5-year-old. But one of the things that I found amazing is through that job, through my interactions with others, I saw the depths of human cruelty, but I also saw the depths of human kindness. And there are so many individuals that if you're suffering, but you're trying your best to get through that suffering, that's when people will stand by you and help you. But the first step is moving through that original dark tunnel by yourself. And that's the place that most people they never make it through. And that's unfortunate. But I see, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of gender, so many people are stuck in the past. And they're so stuck in the past, they can't see the opportunities in the future. Next slide.
We're going to talk about this a little bit later, about the connection with the self specifically and what that means about moving on. But I wanted to focus on when we don't understand ourselves, then we can't understand putting ourselves in the shoes of somebody else and seeing things from their perspective. And the reason that we included this is because in business and in life, right, we come into contact with strangers all the time. And if we cannot understand their point of view or their perception, this can really damage our ability to build relationships with people. So, for this example, right, some cultures, whether it's Japanese, whether it's Arab, whether it's many others, may have their own ways of showing respect to somebody, stranger or otherwise, in business or in normal life. So this man may have a religious or uh, cultural boundary where he may not show respect by shaking a woman's hand or somebody else's hand, but by bowing instead. And, the normal Western modern businesswoman on the right side shows her respect and expects the same type of respect in return by shaking somebody's hand. But if we're expecting what we want without the flexibility to understand how somebody else sees us, then we will destroy our chances entirely of building and forming a relationship. And this is how we cut off our relationships and our connections to other people when we are so rigid that we're focused on what we want and how we expect it to be displayed rather than understanding where other people are coming from and how we actually might be doing the same exact thing in terms of philosophy, but it may show or appear itself in a very different manner. So we get so focused on, you know what? I got out of that toxic relationship. I know what went wrong. I've written down what I want. I'm looking for what I want. But then we fail to perceive or to evaluate the people in front of us because they don't fit a perfect concocted image of our brain of how that person is. So, in business or even at companies I've worked with, right? If we don't understand the basis of somebody else's character, it is very difficult to get along with their personality unless it's exactly the same. But if we understand the basis of somebody's moral compass, of their character itself, and what we've talked about before, character is what builds and sustains relationships, and bad character is what breaks them, then it's easy to get over slight personal or cultural differences because at the very beginning we know the intent of their actions, but we can't do that if we're so focused on what we want in a perfect picture and we don't know how to see or perceive the situation from somebody else's point of view.
Absolutely. So a lot of times it's hard for us to get through trauma bonds or painful situations because we're not looking at our situation from an airplane view. So if you're on the highway, it's hard to know what the disruption is. But if you look at it from an airplane, it's like, oh, okay, clearly this, I can see why this is a problem. And this is why it's so important. If you are having an issue, especially when it's dealing with a significant other or possibly dating or any of these things, and it's persisted over 6 months, you need to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I don't have the skills to fix this right now. And I don't care what book you read, usually, you will probably have to find a mentor or professional help. It's somebody that does this for a living. And this is what our 25th presentation, Ryan. I
Sounds
literally talk to thousands and thousands and thousands of people a year. It is extraordinarily difficult to change your reticular activating system in your brain, to
Mhm.
start becoming healed by yourself. At the bare minimum, you need a strong support system, or you need a really, really, really good trained friend to do this. And it's very difficult for people who are healed to take the time it's going to take to try to heal someone that is stuck in trauma bonds. But most people do not have that skill set. They don't, and they end up causing more harm than good. And the reason I'm bringing this up is, again, this is like the 24th or 25th presentation. I still get comments from people that have been here from the beginning, and they're in the same spot. There's a huge difference between declarative knowledge and procedural knowledge. Declarative knowledge is what you get from a book. That means I read a book, okay. Procedural knowledge means you can act it out in real life. That's the difference between reading a book about, I read a book on how to play basketball and then thinking I can play against Steph Curry or LeBron James. It's a different animal. And we completely underestimate how difficult that change is. So
Mhm.
again, if you're struggling with something that long, I have to just ask you, how long are you going to go through it before you make a change? And a lot of times you have to look at the people around you. You have to look at the people who are influencing you. You have to look at what you're listening to. And often it's almost like you're cleaning a house. You got to clean house one room at a time. And only through a detailed process like that are most people able to make the changes they need to change their life. Next slide. So
So,
one of the ways that this is done, and I know Ryan's going to hop in, is I call it FBI. So when I was doing criminal profiling, I broke it down to focus, background, and intent. And this is how you profile someone. Well, one of many ways. Now, focus is you pay close attention to what a person says and does, not just how they look. A lot of times we bring people into our life and our focus is as if we wear glasses, but we're not wearing glasses when we bring them into our life. So we don't actually see who they are. And this is what happens when somebody says, hey, I dated this person on potential. But you don't bring people into your life based on potential. You bring them into your life based on projection. Where has this person been? Where are they heading? How do they define success in their life? So we can actually look at who someone is. Just like when you hire, if anyone if anyone runs a company, you don't hire certain characters into a company. They'll destroy the company. You have to hire with the right integrity, the right character. Skills can often be taught, but character is extremely hard to change. Next thing you want to do is look at their background, past pattern, values, lifestyle, all these things. It's extremely hard to fake good behavior over a long period of time. So, one of the things to watch out for is people that don't disclose their past, and then they disclose their past in a way where they take no accountability for the major decisions that have happened in their life. This is the sign that whether that's a sign that that person is not healed. And if we're doing it, it's a sign we're not healed because we're not looking at the complete situation of what's happening. And you can't solve an equation without looking at every single variable. The next question is intent, and this is something Ryan goes through a lot, is clarifying motivations. Are they seeking resources, status, genuine connection? Why is this person even out here trying to make friends with me? Why is this person trying to date? I'll tell you from a male point of view, men usually have little patience for other men that are out in this arena and they know they're not healed. Like me as a married man, Ryan's married. We hang out with a bunch of other married men. We If a guy doesn't know what he wants, it's unacceptable. And it's unacceptable because if I put him in a different situation, he's going to tell me the truth. So confusion is unacceptable. If somebody's confused, what they need to do is go home, sit in a room for 30 minutes every other day and figure out who they want to be. But be very careful bringing people into your life who haven't disclosed why they want to be in your life and also what they really want from life. Next slide.
I wanted to add something
Okay.
about this as an actual real world example that a company I'm working with right now is facing.
Uh-oh.
They're a large business that does contracting, commercial, government, or otherwise. And they brought on a small business to fulfill some of the work they really needed. Fast forward a couple of years to where we are now, they have stolen a lot of the partners that we would have liked to team with by lying to everyone else saying, oh, we're working with that company. Yeah, we have team agreements with them. Why don't you join us? And the people aren't having discernment to actually come back and talk to the company and say, is that really what's going on? And so by being on a contract with this company for a couple of years, it's become very successful. Now they're taking that position and lying to people to try and put our company in a very difficult position to win the work again. And so, what was the intent of the company from the very beginning? And how could that have been mitigated? These are the questions that we kind of need to ask people when they're in front of us. What is their intent? How do I check that intent? How do I verify it? At the end of the day, we still might miss something, and that's okay. But every step we take forward in trying to understand and evaluate why people are focusing on us, why they're spending time with us, why they're telling us the things that they're telling, whether they're telling us stories about their life, whether they're being vulnerable or not vulnerable, why they're asking specific information for us. All of this together, along with other people's perspectives, again, who are professionals, who can do this for a living, who are wise, who are experienced in this area, can help you put the picture together a lot better. And at the end of the day, if we cannot determine what their intent is, that is reason enough to kind of put the brakes on and not move forward. Not because they are malicious, we don't know yet, but the fact that we don't know or we can't tell is a reason for us not to move forward yet or not at all. That's why intent is so important. We can play the social game. We can smile. We can tell stories. We can ask each other how they're doing. We can play all the games of what a relationship is supposed to look like. But if we don't understand the intent behind it and what's really happening, that's how we fall into the problematic situations over and over again because we never understood and wrote down what their intent is, and we never check them on it. Bringing us into our next slide. One of the things that gets us into our problematic situations over and over and over again is that we have this idea that if something is painful, let's not go through it. Avoid pain at all costs. But especially the older we get, we know the problems don't become simpler and they don't lessen. They tend to be more complicated and harder to deal with. And even if we're talking about the quote unquote, highly valuable, successful person, they still have problems. Everyone's got to have problems. We're talking about fixing the most immediate, simple problems in our relationship so that we can go enjoy healthy, happy relationships. And pain is going to be part of that. The part that we need to look out for is suffering. Because although pain in life is unavoidable, suffering is an option. And suffering includes choosing to mull over our negative emotions and our failures to the point where it is not helpful anymore. And all we're doing is focusing on the negative and therefore defining ourselves as a negative person. And that's a difference between people who go through trauma, hardship, war, losing a loved one, losing their job, any of these things that really put a trial on people's lives and their future.
I don't know what
Some
that.
people end up okay, and some people end up miserable and are suffering. And that's on our outlook on it. But it's also the second part, which is what we choose to do about it. If we have the pain of loss or a losing a relationship we hoped we had to have, being stuck in a toxic relationship, getting into something for 10 years and getting out of it and feeling like, well, we wasted 10 years of our life. What are we going to do about it? If we choose not to learn from it and do something different, we are choosing to suffer by choosing the pain we could have gotten away from. And that's what we need to focus on. It's not about running away from pain in life. It's about making sure that we don't make it self-inflicted. So having that positive outlook in the face of hardship is so important, and it goes towards whether we're suffering or not. So what is a good red flag for us, Terrence?
One of the big red flags that, and this is something that a lot of men know not to do, is use the phrase, I was only joking. Somebody says something rude or potentially rude, and they'll just say, I was only joking. You got to be very careful playing with people. Like, I was only joking is something you use or you joke around with somebody who you know is your friend. But you got to watch out for manipulative people doing this tactic because they will engage in self-esteem destroying conversations with you, and then they'll hide it under jokes. Probably in Metro Detroit, one of the quickest ways a conversation turns into a fatal interaction is somebody playing around with jokes. I always tell people, especially between males, no matter the situation, they're only 5 to 7 paragraphs away from violence. Meaning, if the conversation goes a certain point, violence is now on the table. I don't care where we're at. I don't care if it's in the middle of the street or in a church. You say something about somebody's wife, you say something about somebody's mama, now who knows what's going to happen. So, bringing that back, be very careful of somebody joking with you at your expense. Another thing that's problematic is watch out for sarcasm. I'm a big believer a lot of times sarcasm is the tool people use when they don't actually have a real personality because it doesn't take a lot of skill to be sarcastic. Watch out for some, especially what happens is somebody will be sarcastic with you when you've said something that you're proud of, when you are having a good day, when you're trying to be on the right path. And the sarcasm is a tool used to bring you back down. It's like crabs in a barrel. And sarcasm goes right into dream killing. Dream killing is you have a place you would like to go in the future, a better version of yourself, a better version of your health, a better version of your wealth, a better relationship with your children, or maybe you want a family, or maybe you just want to improve the quality. And then you have somebody in your life that slowly hurts that dream. You're trying to, maybe you don't want to drink as much, and that person's trying to encourage you to go to the bar. You're trying to take time to learn more about your values and principles, and that person saying, "No, don't do that. Let's just go to the club. Let's just watch out for people like that." Because 9 times out of 10, these people are not your friends. And I'm a huge believer. You're better off having a real enemy than a fake friend. Because the fake friend will abandon you when you need them the most. Next slide.
It's hard to
All right.
understand who somebody is if they're always having a way out of what they say to weasel out of it. And that's another danger of being around people who joke way too much. Then you don't know who they really are if they're always looking for a way out of the conversation.
Very true. So this is something I want people to understand, and this is why it's so important to go through the process of healing. If you don't go through the process of healing, of figuring out why I find myself in problematic relationships, regardless of the relationship, they can be employee boss relationships, you will find yourself in opposition to those who have healed. Problems are contagious. And the better somebody is at creating peace for their life, the quicker they will often be at removing people who disrupt their peace. And a lot of times people say, I can't find friends. I can't find a significant other. I can't find certain things. And as a relationship coach and a criminologist, I get out a sheet of paper and I have them talk to me and tell me about themselves. And I have a giant list of positives and negatives. And often, most of the story they tell about themselves is negative. And if your story is negative, good luck trying to bring positive people within your orbit. They will resist you like a magnet. However, once we start telling better stories about ourselves, and by doing that, we focus on what we want instead of what we don't want. We focus on the work we need to do instead of the work we didn't do. These changes changes the complete circle of individuals around us. It's like a different world. But that's why the illustration of a magnet is so important because we are often magnetized against the people we want to be with because we're not telling the right story or moving in the right direction. I know it happened to me. I changed my magnetism and it changed my life. But I had to start with my own story.
And that brings us to one of the pitfalls we fall into all the time when we are not careful, which is assuming things. And the more we assume that people have qualities that looks like they have it on their surface or they say they have it without being proven, we're running straight for consequences. If we assume the road in front of us is totally fine without looking at it, that's how we run into the car in front of us. That's how we get a really bad pothole that destroys our suspension system in the wheels and spend $6,000 to fix in Michigan in winter. And I can say that because that happened to me. When we're not looking at the road in front of us and evaluating the person in front of us, when we assume things, we have no idea what's going to happen. And that's often why we feel like things have come out of left field and happened to us and we never saw it coming. So instead of assuming who the person is, get to know them. Getting to know somebody is how we get closer to them. If we don't even take the time to get to know somebody, to evaluate, to have them prove who they are, we have no hope of two things. One, staying away from problematic people we shouldn't be anywhere near. And number two, if there's a good person in front of us, good people connect to other people in a genuine manner. And if we just assume things about the person, we never take time to get to learn them, to put them in the position of proving themselves, they often walk away because we're not interesting and we're not getting to know them. And they can tell that we don't have the ability to have a deep, meaningful conversation or build that life together. So let's not assume somebody is successful and rich when they drive up in a Bentley or a Maserati. Let's not assume that they're a professional when they smell nice and have a suit on. These are all things that make it very easy for us to think that they are who we think they are because they're the storybook appearance of what we expect. But if we haven't gotten to know them, then we're heading for a canyon of consequences. And that brings us into our next slide, which is appearance versus ability. If you haven't read the book Think and Grow Rich, just a little bit of background. In the early 1900s, early to mid 1900s, Napoleon Hill wrote this book. And since then, the last 50, 60, 70 years, people have told others to read it, told them this is how you become successful, that this is the blueprint of how to be famous and successful like Napoleon Hill. But here's the problem. It was appearances. If you were a journalist, and some people have taken this on to investigate his claims, you find that they're unfounded, that he did not have the connections to presidents and wealthy or royalty that he claimed to have, that he never had meetings or conversations with certain people. In fact, his financial situation is not what he claimed it was. In fact, what brought him to fame was the fact that he released this book and people bought it. So the appearances of success can be easy to craft, but if we're not looking at whether the story lines up and if the person in front of us is actually who they say they are, then we are falling for that social trap of appearances rather than true ability. And many of the people that have come forth to write similar self-help or inspirational books follow the exact blueprint that he set up of success, which is for a lot of people, fake it till you make it, lie about it, and when people buy your story, make sure you can profit off them hearing your story, and that's how you become rich. And now when people question you, well, you can say, hey, look, I'm successful. What's there to question? So it's not about, right, how the person dresses, where they come from, necessarily what their job is, who their connections are. It's what is their actual ability and does it make sense? There are many people I have dealt with that are above me or the same similar position to me, my coworkers, in the past that I didn't understand how they got to where they were. I really don't. And I only understood that from getting to know who they were, from their ability to perform the work, to plan, to organize, and to execute. But it's easy for them to come to you in a restaurant and tell you that they're an executive at a company. What does the title matter if they don't have the ability? So let's focus on the ability and get rid of the appearances. There are some people who have the ability and they have a marketing issue. And for them, it's easy to fix. They just need a personal style consultant, somebody to let them know they're not coming off the right way. But if we don't know how to determine ability, we're going to run to people who fake it. While the people who are truly successful and truly stable and the people we're looking for are going to look at the people in this situation and say, I'm out. And that's why we don't find them there.
Very true.
So I'm going to start this, and Terrence, I want you to take this slide home. But moving on doesn't mean just forgetting our emotions and detaching ourselves and pretending things didn't happen. It is doing the work we need to do to have better outcome in the future. And the reason it's painful is that in that moment, we are wired to remember every time when we are humiliated, when we are betrayed, and anything that's painful. And it's biologically, it's difficult to focus on the positive. But the only way we get out of that is by taking that pain of messing up or being somewhere we don't want to be and say, what do I need to do to get out of this? What is my plan? What went wrong? Why am I attracted to the patterns of a person who gaslights me, manipulates me, or is physically abusive, or likes to lie, or has no idea what they want? So they flip-flop on their loyalty to me versus somebody else. Why do I entertain this at all? And when we write that down and go, then this is not what I'm going to accept. These are the patterns. This is how I'm going to evaluate somebody. It's going to feel like we're not making progress in the beginning because all we remember is the negative. But without that plan to move forward, we're not going to move past our mistakes that we made. We're not going to move past that emotion. But as anyone can tell you, whether they're an athlete or otherwise, as somebody who played in the Olympic development program, when I was humiliated on the soccer field, when I failed to do something I trained for, what got me out of it was going and training to be better and then doing it the right way several times in a row. At that point, your mistakes don't matter to you anymore and you don't care because you are the person you need to be. Terrence, you told me you needed to make a statement.
Yeah, just real quickly, we don't mind, it's great for people to have conversations in the chat. Only thing I notice is I see somebody who's an author trying to sell their book in the chat. If you're another professional, please have a conversation with me first because I don't know who you are. I don't know what you're trying to sell. I don't know what your qualifications are. And especially in relationships, I'll tell you point blank, if somebody's going to be giving relationship advice, you better be married. So like that's the standard because what I find is single people give people single advice that keeps them single. And I'm just very direct because this is the second time I've seen this person trying to put their book in here. I let it slide the first time. Next time I'm going to ban you from the group. You're warned. Go ahead, Ryan.
What we can do is to set things right. So get rid of the patterns that caused us to be in the situation that we're in and that led us to where we don't want to be, and then do something different. And if that doesn't work, get a new source of information, find a professional, and change our plan until we see progress. That is what moving on means. If our actions align with the past, we're not moving on. If our actions align with a different future, even if we still feel that pain, that's fine. But that's how we're moving on. And part of moving on is understanding who we are. And this is a little bit less of the criminological profiling side and more towards the personal emotional side. And it's difficult to move on if we don't know who we are. It's difficult to choose the people that are good for us if we don't know what's good for us. And we can't know what's good for us if we don't know who we are and what we need. So a lot of the times I've heard from countless people who have trouble from heartbreak and are having the same patterns and failing to move on is having the wrong definition of who we are. We are not our failures unless we decide that we are our failures, meaning we quit, that we're not doing anything that could possibly move us forward. Now you were defining yourself as a failure. And a lot of the times there's this concept that, if I gave my time or my love to somebody and they left, that, or maybe that I had to leave because they were a bad person, that you have lost a piece of yourself as if they took it and then left with it and you can never get it back. That is true about our time. And we can always use our time and choose to use it more wisely in the future. And the pain of lost time or lost resources is going to sting. But we are not a, a physical soul that can just be broken off by people and then they take pieces with it and that's it. We can never get it back. We cannot lament over our difficulties. We are what we choose to do and what we believe and what we look forward towards. We are the intentions that we have. But more importantly, even if we have good intent, we've got to be smart about what we do and we have to go do it. And that's what defines us. No matter how many times we fail, we are continuing to move forward, and that's what defines us. So, people who know the common story possibly told in high school or college about Thomas Edison inventing the light bulb, they asked him how he felt about failing about it 10,000 times before he got it. And he said, "What's there to be sad about?" Or, "What do you mean? I found 10,000 different ways of how not to make a light bulb, and that's how I got the answer of how to do it." And that's how we have the positive attitude and outlook on our lives. Fail as often as we need to, as long as we're trying to succeed, but we have a reason to feel like we are, which is evaluate ourselves, evaluate the people in front of us, and have a reason to move forward with this person. We need to know who we are. So, what did I actually lose? We lost maybe our time, we lost our resources, we lost maybe a potential partner that we were looking for, and we lost the ability or the time that we had to work on ourselves. But as long as we're alive, there's more time, and there's time for hope, and there's time to work on it. So, Terrence, finish us off on this slide.
Absolutely. So one of the things we need to realize is that, and this is just unfortunate because other than being a criminologist, I also come from finance. We can either invest in the beginning and live off our investment later, or we can spend now and then wish we invested later. And what often happens is with a relationship, we start off just playing around, having fun, not really investing, not really creating boundaries, not really creating safety, not really creating a destination. And then later on, we try to backdoor a serious relationship from what is essentially a teenage playing field. And that's the problem. And I can't stress this enough. You will end up in the relationship you started with. So if you start a relationship that's trivial, you will often end up with a marriage, if it makes it that far, that's trivial.
Mhm.
And so many people, again, a lot of my clients are men from all over the world. And I always ask the first question, how did you start off the interaction? How did you start off the relationship? And it started off wrong. And it started off wrong. And what happened? It usually ends wrong. And it's just, let's say it's an extra 44 weeks working on yourself to where now you attract the right person and you also notice the right people. Are we going to take that time to truly get our discernment correct? Or are we just going to keep being out here tripping over ourselves over and over again? And it's often that change in our perceptions and the way we move through life that completely changes the results we have. Next slide.
What will help us keep track of what we want and what's happening and where we want to go is writing things down. We need to write down all of the things we believe about ourselves. We need to take a self-assessment on our past relationships and write it down. But this also is extremely important when we are meeting or evaluating somebody new, because the way that we feel paints our memories of somebody. We may not remember what somebody told us, but we remember how they made us feel. That's just how we work. We can't remember everything, but we remember whether somebody made us feel bad or made us feel good. And the problem with this is Oftentimes we overlook what somebody does or what somebody says. And in the detail is where we find the reason to leave them or to continue. So a good practice is, we've talked about it in the past, is listening with intent and asking somebody the right questions. So after our interactions with people, after a date, after a phone call, after hanging out and talking, we should immediately go and write down to the best of our ability what we asked, what their answers were, what happened, our outlook on the situation. Because a week from them, 2 weeks from them, when we want to understand, should I move forward or who is this person, to the best of your ability, it's written down. And Terrence can tell you that, when it comes to crime scenes or to, things that get investigated, people's memory gets messed up about something very quick, especially if it's traumatic.
Mhm.
So if we have intent and we do things for a reason, we are meeting somebody for 30 minutes, not 4 or 5 hours, and we're talking about a very specific idea or concept, or we're trying to get to know them for a very specific reason. I want to know about their family, or I want to know about their friends, or I want to know how they view hardship, for instance. I'm going to focus and hone in on that, and it's going to help me remember the conversation. And then that's what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down what happened later. And I'm going to keep a track of my relationship with this person. That's really what helps us understand where we need to go and whether we're going to move forward or stop, because it is our own accountability to save us from our own mind. And our own mind, because it's forgetful, because it can be biased, is what often leads us into problematic situations. So part of that is understanding that the advice that people give us of opposites attract, go find somebody who's opposite from you and it'll end up well, is not really understanding how relationships are built. It's not about somebody opposite of us. That if I'm calm and collected, I need a hot-headed woman, right? Or if I'm really introverted, I need somebody who's really extroverted. Or even if I like to run businesses and I like high energy, I need to find the opposite, because we're not understanding it's not the opposite that builds a relationship, it's complement. Complementary characteristics are what bring a relationship together. If we are opposites, we are going to resent each other. But what's helpful for me, for instance, as somebody who likes to wake up early, stay up late, really focus in on stuff, is that my wife knows how to relax. It's not that she's not willing to work hard. Right now, she's been studying for about 6 hours. It's not that she doesn't know how to work hard or doesn't want to work as hard as I do. It's the fact that she complements my sense of intensity in a way that makes it healthy in our relationship. And
Very,
video games are one of the best ways to see that.
very true. Also, like one of the reasons I work with Ryan is we complement each other. Like me and him both have slight autism, so we constantly work over and over and over again. I literally don't, I can't not be an analyst. I'm constantly analyzing things. But we have to be around people that complement that. So if somebody wants to play, play all day, if they don't want to learn, I can't be their friends because they're going to get tired of me and I'm going to get tired of them. So you create a network of individuals like yourself. So for instance, Ryan, when you were talking about Thomas Edison, you know that entire Thomas Edison story is very fraudulent. Like he did not create the light bulb.
Mm,
He actually hired 30 to 50 other scientists. But a lot of times, like what happens in corporate America, people take ideas from other people, slap their name on it, and then we have to depend on history to tell the truth. So the light bulb was actually created back in like 1800, you
mm.
know, but Thomas Edison got credit for it, but his name isn't Humphrey. But that's why it's so because the guy who actually created was his name was Humphrey Davy. So, but so much of what we think is true is actually not true. And
Well,
that's why it's so important to have discernment. Every time somebody puts out a fact,
mhm.
there's often a fact within that fact. Thomas Edison was the best at doing what? Commercializing and monetizing the light bulb. But that's the story that gets told. But see, that's why you have to be around friends that are constantly learning. So me and Ryan are constantly learning together. Our families are constantly learning together. Our wives are constantly learning together. And so much of our reality is being around people that care about knowledge. Something else, if you're looking for a long-term relationship with someone, they cannot have an aggressive relationship with knowledge. It's called cognitive flexibility. If they don't want to learn, if they don't want to look at new ways to solve problems, they will eventually end up like a Windows 97. They will likely become irrelevant, not just in the business world, but in your relationship world as well, because they're not going to want to change as you change and grow. So just throwing that out there.
No, thanks, man. I appreciate you. I appreciate the opportunity to fix one of my false stories. Um,
No, that wasn't false. We just had to, add some stuff to it.
yeah, no, but I appreciate you. And to redeem myself, Newton did not invent calculus. Leibniz did. But Leibniz notation, if anyone is an engineer or mathematician, sucks to use. I'm going to tell you that right now. You have to write way too much to get it to work. Newton got it to work by making it easier to write.
Yeah, very true.
So, with that being said, steps to healthier connections. You want to start us off, Terrence?
Yeah. So when people say, "Hey, how do I become healed?" Here's some a basic framework. Define yourself without the need for others. So you have to find quietness. Me personally, I love racing cars. I love being in cars. A lot of my best ideas arrive when I'm on the freeway driving early in the morning and late at night. But you got to find a place where people are not talking to you and telling you who you are. And what you want to do is do what humans have been doing since the dawn of time. Create a picture in your mind of the existence you want to have. And then you start painting and writing out your picture. Because everything around you in the natural world was mostly made by someone not any smarter than you. And that's one of the things that I found out with business. I thought, oh my God, people making nine figures must be really smart. No, they're just regular people. A lot of them are really stupid, but they're very smart about certain aspects of business that made them really wealthy. But that is what I go back and I tell so many young people when I do consulting or coaching or is that it's all about what you choose to pay attention to. But the knowledge is there. If you can use a computer, if you have basic analytical skills, there's very few things you can't accomplish, especially in America. So define that. Next, I am who I choose to be, so let me choose to be a great person. A lot of times we underestimate what we could do. We overestimate how successful we could be in a year, and we underestimate how great we could be in a decade. So if a lot of people if they're not getting results in a year, they give up. But they don't realize if they would have just kept doing it, they would have likely found some degree of success in what they're doing. And at the end, I'm going to put out a surprise because me and my aunt have been working on a project for a long, long time, years. And we finally have amazing results. And I'm going to talk about that at the end because one of the differences in this community is you're talking to people that don't just talk, but we can show that we are actually who we say we are. So, with that said, think about this. I am not what others do to me, but how I respond defines my character, my peace, and ultimately my destiny. So when we talk about pain versus suffering, we have to think about the conversation we're telling ourselves. So I have been manipulated, even as a criminologist, I've been manipulated by sociopaths. Some of them are really good. But the conversation I tell myself is I'm not perfect. And this was a lesson. Some people are lifelong friends, other people are lessons. Now, when we can't get people out of our brain, a lot of the reasons why we can't is because our mind is telling us we haven't learned the lesson. So often sit down and think about what was I supposed to learn from this interaction? And that often that individual's hold on you starts to dissipate. And with that said, Ryan, bring us home the next two.
The first bit of success that somebody starts to achieve, if anyone is familiar with the Dunning-Kruger effect, which I forgot to put the graph on here, but it's basically your level of experience versus your level of arrogance or confidence is the first little bit of success we get. We start to get really arrogant or have a false sense of confidence that I know what I'm doing and I'm doing well because everything's going well. And what people fall into is as they get the ability to discern who's in front of them and their life starts looking up, they miss one thing, which is a good person is sitting in front of you, a wonderful person is sitting in front of you. But just because they're wonderful, just because they have good qualities, are those the qualities you need in your life? And that is sometimes how we end up committing to somebody who is good, but may not have been the person we needed. And that can build a different type of resentment. But the easy way to get around it, it's difficult emotionally, but it's easy when we look at it on paper, which is to understand, are we looking at this person off their potential and who they could be and who we want them to be? And are we getting lost and infatuated with them? Or are we able to discern and separate ourselves and say, you know what? This is a wonderful person and I'm glad that they exist, but they are not going to fulfill the role or the job description of what I need and what I'm looking for. And it's okay to walk away from that. It is okay. But it only makes sense when you know what you really need and you know how to discern the person in front of you. So when we focus on their inspirational qualities and their good qualities, let's compare them to our vision. Let's compare them to what we really need first before we move forward. So many people are wonderful. That doesn't mean that they'll be wonderful for us and our plans. And the last thing is, we cannot build a true, deep, meaningful connection with somebody if we don't know how to build experiences with them. So we can do that by building the life that we both want by helping each other and focusing on our strengths. That is how we build the rapport and the understanding of somebody, of each other, that when we fail, we accept from each other that it's part of our human side. But we have built a life focused on our strengths and how we're going to complement each other and make each other better. If we don't do that, then this is where we socially point fingers at the other person and ignore the possibility of moving forward. And we destroy a possible relationship or we destroy the actual relationship in front of us because it wasn't foundationally based on getting to know the person for who they are and for sacrificing and building what we want. Because even if Terrence makes a mistake and hurts me, we have spent way too long understanding each other's character and sacrificing for a common vision that it would be very difficult to point my finger at him and tell him this one time you made a mistake makes you such a horrible person. I don't know who you were. Goodbye. It's very difficult to do that. And it would be very difficult for him to do something that bad where we would have to even consider it. So we need to focus on building real experiences with somebody. Um, Terrence is going to take us home, but before I just wanted to introduce the uncanny valley. And this is where we often start getting into problematic relationships. The uncanny valley is when something that is fake resembles something that is real, so close to it, but something's off, and it terrifies us because our brain is biologically structured to be very good at noticing patterns. And so we notice a pattern and we can tell something is off, but we might not know how to label it. We might not know how to put it together. And that uncanny valley of relationships is when somebody goes through the motions of mimicking a relationship that on its surface, on its outside, looks so much like a relationship, but it's not. So, how does that look like, Terrence? How do they build that?
Well, what you do is you mimic something to as best you can. But the thing is, you always have to go back to is it's mimicking. There's a very good quote that the devil can't create anything, just mimic it. And this is what I found through hunting sociopaths, hunting criminals, whatever, is if somebody in their core is not a good person, you will find chips in their armor of them doing something that's not just irritating, but destructive. So if you see somebody driving 110 miles an hour in an F-150 just barreling through traffic, and especially in close quarters, I don't need to know much more else about you to know that I should probably not befriend you. And what happens is we don't notice uncanny valley problems because we're not watching people. Me, I'm constantly watching people. Everywhere, every time I go in a room, I'm watching people. Joe, you can put your hand down. I'll take it. We'll be taking questions a little bit later. I appreciate you though. But that's why it's so important to be healed, because if you're not healed, you can't notice the uncanny problems within someone that they're hiding. You don't notice the chips in the armor. You don't look at them and say, if this person is who they're presenting themselves to be, why are they not more successful in life? And it's those contradictions that we need to pay attention to. Almost every victim I ever spoke to, there was a situation where they stopped trusting their own discernment in a way that helped the predator victimize them. And a lot of the coaching and a lot of therapy is helping people get over the guilt of not noticing problematic people. Again, if this is your first time watching, this is just a small bit of what me and Ryan do. We have many, many articles on our Patreon that go into much more detail. I'm going to be going into a lot of detail about the Uncanny Valley on Patreon, and as well as the book will be coming out in the next couple weeks. We have a workbook that comes along with it, and we're going to go through all of these psychological problems that can happen and name them and start evaluating so people can actually make real changes. But again, watch out for the uncanny valley, and we'll be going deeper into that later. Next.
Take us home, Terrence.
Oh yeah. Oh, fully taking us home. Okay. Well, thank you for
Yeah.
attending. Shout out to our pledge supporters. We appreciate you. I keep a constant thing of Tim Hortons that I'm not sharing with Ryan yet. I will. Don't worry. I got you when you come up here. But we appreciate you. And now we're about to go to the news.
So some exciting news, Terrence.
So big news. We didn't even talk about this, but if you've seen my aunt, me and my aunt, we talk about relationships, we talk about movies, and oh, this has been a 5-year project, basically, is coming out with a new rendition of Frankenstein. And it is number 14 on Amazon. So we have the 14th book out of 1.1 million in that category. So you can go on Amazon right now and you'll see it. Actually, oh, we made it to 13, Ryan. We beat out, we actually beat out the original version of Frankenstein. Yeah, the original version of Frankenstein is like 32, 34. So the reason I'm showing this is that I'm not a sci-fi writer. I'm an analyst. My aunt had her son died very early in life, and she went from being a claims adjuster to a writer in the age of 60s. She wrote many books. A lot of them didn't become very popular. But now, at the age of 70 years old, now we're essentially becoming New York Times bestsellers. And so it's never too late to change your life. It's never too late. So going forward, if you're interested in that type of content, me and my aunt will be making an entire series. We have memorabilia coming out because when you start selling, novels like that, people pay attention. But again, I'm not a writer. I'm not trained as a writer, but I knew I had a story and I had an analysis that I wanted to share with people. My aunt didn't go to school for journalism. She was a claims adjuster, worked for GM, but she changed her life at 70. And now her book is in Barnes and Noble. Oh, you're talking about, in the future, maybe movie deals. All this because she was willing to change and take her pain and do something useful with it. And I see this over and over and over again. And that's why I give this information to the community as well, is because many of us have amazing stories, we have amazing talents, but we don't share them with the world around us. We don't focus on the connections we could have that can completely change our life. So when we start doing more of the workshops and the Patreons and the more intense workshops, I want people to go in there and thinking, what kind of life do they want? Seriously, what kind of life do you want? What kind of impact do you want to have on the world? If somebody read an autobiography of your life, what would you want to have in it? And then start being that person. And with that said, our second book will be coming out soon, How to Choose a Man. It's not just a book, we have a workbook and a calendar. It's all finished at this point. We're just going through publication. And if you have never been through publication, it's something. But that's why you have to have attorneys. You got to have all that other good stuff in place. But it's coming. I will say it's definitely the most intricate relationship book I've ever seen, but I wanted it to be as intricate as possible. So with that said, we will not be having any more events or workbooks until the book is out. Because that's I'm telling you, like we right now we got one book that's doing very well. We got another book that's scheduled to do very well, and that's taking a lot of time. So hopefully by the end of the month, we'll start having more workshops and presentations again. But in the meantime, we're here for question and answer for a while. But the book is kind of dominating, our existence right now. And with that said, we are no longer recording.